Hello everyone, I'm Kimberly from Dirt Floor Fibers and welcome or welcome back. It is officially November 1st, which means that despite it being 80 degrees outside, I mean check the t-shirt, I'm starting to think about planning out my yarn advents for this year. I'm really excited. I'm hoping everything will be starting to come in the mail soon. And I think the toughest part of the whole process is having the boxes and holding yourself back from actually opening them until it's time to begin on December 1st. Now, this is my third year trying yarn advents, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. So 2 years ago, I started with the Sweet Georgia box. It was a lot of fun. I didn't actually open it really in December. I really waited until January when I had some more time. And then I kind of opened it at my leisure, just opening a new color each time I finished off the old color. That one was kind of fun because it did come with a knit and a crochet pattern that was broken down by like the day to kind of help pace out your knitting. And I don't believe it had 24 minis. I think it was fewer. I think there were like little mini gifts interspersed between. And so then that way there were like days where you didn't have to finish off an entire color to keep up with the project. And so I found that I was actually able to knit the entire shawl in 1 month, which I'm usually not that fast of a knitter. But it was just, you know, a reasonable amount of knitting each day. And I don't know, it turned out really great. Wasn't really my cup of tea color wise. I don't remember all the specs for what the yarn and stuff were. But the fiber was nice to work with, or the yarn was nice to work with. It was nicely dyed. It just, the pattern and the colors, they just weren't really me, although I usually love the stuff from Sweet Georgia. That same year, I had also ordered a fiber advent box from them as well. And then I forgot about it in a corner. And so it was ages before I even opened it. And it's actually still sitting out on a folding table I have over in the corner laid out because I had wanted to actually spin it up. And then I laid it out and looked at it and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I kind of wish that box had come with some spinning recommendations. It was pretty neat though, because while the colors were pretty much the same colors that they had dyed the yarn with, the fibers were all different. They were different blends and they were all labeled, which I thought was kind of neat, especially if you're going to make like one giant skein of yarn. You can have all kinds of different types of wool inside that same one and kind of use that as sampling. So I thought that was fun. It also came with like some locks, I think. And then I can't remember, there's some other little fibery gifts in there as well. So I enjoyed it, but I never got another one of the Sweet Georgia ones. Like it was worth it at the time, but it just wasn't something I wanted to repeat. So last year, because I had done really well with the one box, I decided to expand and get 2 boxes. So the 2 companies that I ordered from were Hedgehog Fibers and Magpie Fibers. Now the Hedgehog Fibers were 24 mini skeins, 20 grams each, and they're a merino nylon blend, which that's not normally like a blend that I like to use in my pretty garment knitting. And so I was a little iffy on that, but have always really liked their colors, but it's really hard to tell because their colors are so wild. It's hard to tell how they'll actually knit up in a garment. So I figured that this would be a really great chance to sample a bunch of their colorways and then kind of be able to see what their colors ended up looking like. So for that particular project or that particular box, I ended up doing the Adventina shawl, which I'm wearing right now. I still haven't blocked it or cut off the ends, but it looks good if I fold it like this, right? It's fine. And so that particular project called for 23 minis in one 100-gram skein. And so I kind of panicked, and after I ordered the box, went back and ordered a single skein to make sure I had enough. Now, I think in this particular one, you probably could have gotten away with 24. No, you would have needed 25 minis, I think. Or, I don't know, because this last color on the end is what came out of my 100-gram skein, but I never measured to see how many grams this used. So maybe you do need more of this. But I ended up using 24 minis and then the one extra color on the end, and I had plenty of that left over, obviously. Love the pattern. It was fantastic. It's just it's chevrons. I'm still very into chevrons. And it's alternating just some garter stitch along with the lace sections, which it was super easy to do, super easy to memorize. And I love it's huge, but it makes a really pretty like scarf or a shawl to wrap around your shoulders. So highly recommend that pattern. Hedgehog Fibers did release a pattern last year to go along with their advent, and it was actually holding 2 strands together, and so it would have made a DK weight. So that's also a way to kind of speed up your knitting a little bit, is if you go for those ones where they're held double. Obviously, with this one, I just held it single, so, but very nice. This year, Hedgehog Fibers is going to be releasing both a crochet, I forgot what it's called for a second, a crochet and a knitting pattern. If you go on their Instagram, they've already released like desaturated snippets, so you can kind of see what it looks like. The one for crochet looks like it's going to be like a chevron pattern, and then the knitting pattern looks like it's feather and fan lace. So those should be super pretty. I actually, after I saw those, I kind of had not buyer's remorse, and I was like, maybe I should go on and see if I can find someone who's still selling a Hedgehog Fibers box. But the only like third party that still had them in stock was selling them for $375. And I was like, nope, not gonna get one. It's fine, don't need that. So I didn't get one this year. Again, I can't remember if I said this already, but it was a merino nylon blend. And so the end product's really nice. Knitting with it, it was a little bit rough. Not a huge fan of it, but the shawl feels nice. It was a little splitty. Like, it's not super tightly spun, and I don't know if you can see this, but I've got some places where it like snagged, either when it was riding around in my bag, or I did a lot of knitting at night because I had a lot of night work in December last year. And so I'm hoping it'll block out, but if you're looking that close, then that's your problem, not mine. So what I liked about this, once you like opened up the minis before I wound it into a ball, you could kind of see like how they were dyed up. And then once you kind of knit it up, you could see how the particular pattern plays out in a knitted project. And so I feel a lot more confident if I were to go on and buy something else from Hedgehog Fibers. I feel a little bit more confident in being able to know like what it's going to look like in a final piece based on how these kind of sample minis knit up. So I did like that. If you're interested in trying out Hedgehog Fibers, this seems like a way to go. And I think they do have like mini kits that you can buy. So even if you missed out on the advent, you could go and buy a mini kit and then just kind of enjoy advent knitting, even though the colors wouldn't necessarily be a surprise. Or you could get somebody else to buy you a mini kit, and then they can pop them into little like paper bags, and then you can be surprised when you open it. There are lots of ways to get advent knitting. So anyways, that was my first box. Then I also got the box from Magpie Fibers, which was Zodiac themed. Theirs is pretty neat. They came with 12 minis, one 100-gram skein, and then 8 little fibery sorts of gifts. It was everything from like lotions to mugs to stitch markers. There's like a little trinket dish for your stitch markers, all kinds of fun things. And then they also released 2 free patterns. One was a crochet and one was a knit. I was not a huge fan of either of them. The patterns just weren't really my style. And so I ended up doing a different one, which I'll talk about in just a second. Their fiber, absolutely gorgeous. I was a little disappointed by the colors because I didn't feel like they really matched with like the Zodiac, but it was fine. The colors are pretty. But it's a merino cashmere nylon mix, which absolutely gorgeous. Love it. I think it's their Swinky sock base, if I'm not mistaken, is what they call it. The trouble with this is that this base has a little bit less yardage than a lot of like your merino nylons, just because of the nature of the fiber. And so you have to be really careful when looking at patterns to make sure that your minis have the right yardage. So that's something just to kind of consider. So what I ended up doing for that project was the 4 granny shawl. And this is a project that called for 2 100-gram skeins in 2 different colors, and then 5 or 6 minis. They had 2 different kind of like recipes depending on how many minis you had. So I sat down and I did math. I think it's probably one of my Vlogmas videos or one of the lead up to Vlogmas videos. Me doing all of the math for this, but I figured out how to do the shawl with 12 minis and 1 main skein. So basically what I'm doing, because you have like the 2, it called for 2 main colors that you would stripe, So I'm basically striping the main color from the Advent with the minis to like compensate for that extra skein that I don't have. And then I'm doing the 6 mini version. So it's like 6, I'm telling you, it's complicated, but I'll like pop a picture of the 4 granny shawl. 6 colors on one end, and then it only uses like half the mini skein, and then going back down the other end, I'll use the other 6 colors. I also kind of changed up the pattern a little bit. It's sitting here, but my yarn is like rolling all over the floor. It's okay. I changed up the pattern just a little bit. I can't remember if I made all these notes on my Ravelry page yet. I'm working on building that up. But I did add a 3-stitch I-cord edge. That's what it's called. I added a 3-stitch I-cord edge, which I kind of made it up as I went along. And the starting edge, I'm not really sure how to start it out with an I-cord edge, so I kind of made it up. So it's pointy, but I think it looks good. I feel like it just looks a lot neater when you have either a slip stitch or an I-cord edging. And because with the minis, you've got so many ends, the I-cord makes it super easy to hide your ends going up the side. So I just decided to do that. And then these sections, so it's garter stitch here. And then the color sections are supposed to be moss stitch, which I hate with a fiery passion. And so I was like, I'm going to do linen stitch instead. Yeah, like that was going to be faster. But I do love linen stitch. And I couldn't like remember why I never do anything in linen stitch. And then I started doing this and now I remember. The fabric is so interesting. Like it's very dense. It's not super stretchy, but it looks almost just like woven fabric. And so I think it's going to be a really cool contrast between like the garter stitch and lace sections and these really smooth linen stitch sections. So I just kind of made it up. It works. It works. In December of last year, I had started out doing both projects, bouncing back and forth. But by the time I hit the end of this blue section, I knew I couldn't keep up with both of them. So I just worked on the Adventina, and then it took me like all year to finish this. And then I've just picked this back up, and I've done basically this pink section so far. My goal for November, I've got so many markets coming up that I'm crocheting like my brains out on plushies, but I don't have to do any more knitting on my samples like I was trying to do before. So I think all of my knitting energy will be going into finishing this. I'd really like to get it off the needle before December 1st. I don't know if that's gonna be possible, but that's kind of our goal, to get the 4 granny finished up. And then that way I can start fresh in December with a new project. So let me toss that to the side. So obviously I learned last year that 2 Advents were just too many Advents for me. So clearly this year I was only going to purchase 1. And I had decided on the Naughty Pine, the Advent from Naughty Pine. They had this really pretty, it was like, I think it was like wildlife themed last year, and it was a fade, and the colors were like really deep and earthy. And I'm like, my color palette all the way. Their stuff is gorgeous. That's what I want. They had a couple different bases. Sorry, my hair's like crazy over here. But they had a base that was DK. And I'm like, that is perfect because, you know, December is really crazy and busy, but if I'm knitting with a DK, like it's going to knit up faster, right? It just makes sense. So they also said this year that it was going to be like more of a contrast and less of a fade. So like it'll stripe a little bit more. So I was like, yes, yes, yes. Went ahead and bought it. Super happy with my purchase. And then Hugh Loco posted some pictures advertising their Botanical Fade Advent. And I was like, I don't need it. The colors are like really pretty. It's supposed to be, I don't know if it's like inspired by natural dyes or if it's actually dyed with natural dye. I was very unclear on that. But I was like, no, you don't need it. And then it sold out. And I was very sad. And then they had some extras. And so I bought one. So I got their, I think it's their singles. I didn't write it down in my notes. But they have a few different bases, but one of them was 100% merino single, which I think is what I chose, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe possibly. And so that one's actually already come. Is that right side up? It's upside down. It's already come in the mail, and it is taking everything in me to not like open it and look. But I'm gonna wait until closer to December to get everything ready for opening. So I got that one. And then Fiber Fox out of the UK posted their color palette, which is themed Witching Hour, which, how cool is that? Oh, by the way, Naughty Pine with the DK, I think it's 24 minis and then a full skein, I hope. And the Hue logo is also 24 minis with one main skein as well. And then I think you could order extra of the main skein, but I just got the one that came with the kit. Then Fiber Fox, like I said, had their Witching Hour one. And again, I was like, you bought two. You don't need a third one. And then it sold out and I was sad. And then they posted their extras. They're kind of cool. And actually, as of the last time I checked today, they still have extras available on their website. They had, I can't even remember, it was like 5, 6 different bases that you could choose from. And there are also like some add-on bags. You could either get a large ruffle bag or a bucket bag, or you could just get the yarn. I snagged their alpaca silk cashmere fingering weight. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Unfortunately, they didn't have the ruffle bag or the bucket bag available in that particular base. They must have like kits set aside. So I think there are some bags available with some of their other bases, but I didn't want to compromise my yarn just to get a bag. So I ended up just going with the yarn, as I said, in the alpaca silk cashmere base. I'm very excited about this. And it comes with 24 minis. I think it's a fade, but I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember what the description said, and now I can't like find a description of it anywhere. But as I was looking at patterns, I was really worried because what happens if I find, a pattern that I really like that has an extra skein with it, and then now I've just got minis and no matching skein. So I sent them an email and was like, hey, I just bought one of these Overflow Advent boxes. Is there any way that you can pick me out a skein of yarn, just a full skein, that either like goes with it or is like an extra pop of color or just surprise me? Just can you pick me out something? And they're like, sure, I've got just the thing. I'm like, score. It's also coming from the UK, so I was hoping they could just shove it all in the same box so I wouldn't have to pay extra shipping, because shipping from there is very expensive. So the invoice they sent me said that it's gray. So I don't know if they just charged me for a gray one and like I'm not going to know what the color is, or if gray is the contrast color, which you might be thinking, like most people would be like, gray, how boring is that? But I love gray. Like gray is my jam. So regardless of whether it's just like a placeholder color so I don't ruin the surprise, or if it is actually gray, I'm thrilled. It's alpaca, silk, and cashmere, guys. My gosh. Okay, so 24 minis for that. And again, I don't know the yardage. I don't know if this is going to be like another Magpie Fibers situation where there's less yardage, so I have to be careful with that. So we'll find out when it gets here. Hopefully it'll tell me. So that's 3. I'm done. So I was at the Frederick Fiber Festival last weekend, weekend before. It must have been last weekend. Everything's blurring together in my head though. And it's near Magpie Fibers. It's literally like a 10-minute drive away from Magpie Fibers. So I went on their website just to double check their hours, because I wanted to swing by and just kind of look around, say hi, whatever, that sort of thing. And when I went on their website, they still had extras of their advent calendar. And it was really nice. Remember, it's the merino cashmere nylon blend. And I bought one. So I'm getting 4 advents this year. Mistakes were made, but that's okay. Plenty of yarn for knitting. We'll worry about that later. So what am I going to do for December? So on my Ravelry page, if you go on Ravelry and look me up at Dirt Floor Fibers, I am starting to put some of my projects up there because I want to document them a little bit more, especially if I make changes to them or if I'm have notes about what kind of yarn I use or like advents, things like that. It also helps me remember what it is I did, because some of these things I start and then they sit in my UFO project for a while. Project pile, UFO project pile. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. And I forget what I was doing. So I'm hoping by putting it in there, it'll help kind of keep me on track as well and keep me a little bit more accountable. But I also put together a favorites bundle of Advent patterns. I think this can be really great that as I see things throughout the year that could work for Advent or just mini skeins or scraps in general, pop it in there, and then that way I have everything listed in one place, and so it's a little bit easier to track down what I'm looking for. So what I have in my bundle, some of them are specifically for Advent knitting. You do have to look at them really closely though, because some of them are 24 minis, some of them are 25 minis, some of them have one extra skein of a contrast color, some of them need 2 extra. It's all over the place, and so you just really have to look. And then some of the projects are like scrappy projects, which don't necessarily correspond to like an Advent calendar, like you need 10 minis or 16 minis, or you just need X number of grams in scrap yarn, things like that. And some of them are just stripey patterns where the pattern calls for like 2 or 3 skeins of contrasting colors. But I think if you do the math, you would be able to use mini skeins or an Advent calendar to knit the project. So there's a variety on there. But I'm really excited to have that kind of saved and in my back pocket. If you go on and look and there are other projects that work for Advents or minis that you really like, drop them down in the comments. I'll add them to my page if I think they kind of work with the style that I'm going for. There's a lot of really awesome options that I like. And some of them are smaller as well. They would use a little bit less yardage, so you can still get a lot of colors in them, but it'd be a little bit less knitting if you're trying to finish it all up just in 1 month. So for my Naughty Pine, because that's DK, I think I've settled on the Christmas Sampler by Addison Vollner. It's actually calling for fingering weight held double, but I should be able to do with the DK, and it's like blocky sections, so it's not like it has to fade or marl or anything like that. So I think that's going to work out. It calls for 24 20 gram skeins, there we go, at 87 yards plus 400 yards optional of another color. Or there's another version of it, or I don't know if there's a smaller version or if this is maybe their DK number. That would make sense. So it also lists either 44 to 49 yards and 246 yards of an optional other color. That might actually be if you're just using DK. In my head, there's a big one and a small one, but that might be their DK yardage. So that really helps out for when my Advent actually gets here in the mail. So I think I've settled on that, and I want that to be my December knitting. I think I'm going to open all of my skeins each day and look at the colors and ooh and ah, and maybe even wind them up. But I'm only going to concentrate on knitting one project. I think that's going to be really nice and relaxing and take a lot of the stress out of the process for December. The other project that I really want, and I don't know, it would either be for the Hue Loco or the Fiber Fox, and I think by opening them, I can probably make a better decision later on which one makes more sense. But I really like the Advent Envy by Amanda Rios. This one calls for 24 colors, 46 yards each. So I think even if like the Fiber Fox being the alpaca silk cashmere, if it has lower yardage, 46 yards should be, there should definitely be that in a 20 gram mini, even if it has slightly lower than usual. Sorry about that. There was a little bit of a kerfuffle at work that I had to stop and solve, but everything is okay now. As I was saying, even if the yardage for that alpaca silk cashmere is a little bit lower than like a merino nylon, 46 yards should definitely, there should definitely be enough for that. So I'm really loving this Advent Envy. Again, by opening all the colors, I can probably make a better decision over if I like the Hue Loco or the Fiber Fox better for that particular pattern, or if I hate both of them for that. So I might need to wait another year to do that. So in my list of patterns that I've collected, I think there's like 49 options. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and pop up pictures of all 49 options because you would be here forever and you probably want to just go look at them yourself. So I recommend going over there and checking them out. Some of them are newer, some of them are older, but there's all kinds of options. Sorry, something else came through again. I really got to stop trying to film right at a time when programs are getting started because everything comes through. But I think everything's fine. Don't have to actually stop and take care of that. So another one that's high on my list, though, to try out is the Grad Event by Julia Maria Hegenbart. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. That one calls for 24 20-gram minis or 25 minis and a 100-gram main. I think the difference between the two, because it looks like it might be like knit sideways as like a gradient, and then maybe a border is picked up along the bottom in that kind of that extra main skein. And then I'm wondering if that 25th mini is just the pop of color that binds it off along the bottom, because in that case, none of my fiber box or none of my yarn hat vents have 25 minis. They're just 24. That should be pretty easy to just pick up a 25th mini somewhere that's like a pop of color that's different from all the other ones. So I like that one. It's a little bit more plain, but I feel like it'd be like just really easy, relaxing knitting that would show off all the colors and wouldn't take a lot of brain power, which I really feel like Advent knitting should not take a lot of brain power, at least if you're trying to do it in December. If you want to do an Advent calendar or use your minis like another month, January or February perhaps, you could do something with a little more brain power, but I like something simple if I'm going to be knitting it in December. I also really like the Jenny Little Christmas by Jackie Badger. I'll put it up on the screen because I can't read my handwriting on here. But that one caught my interest because it's actually knit in 3 different directions. The description says that it's really easy knitting, but it's just enough to like with the direction changes to like keep your interest, which I think is interesting. That one takes 24 minis and it uses about 15 grams of each one. And it's also, because it is designed to be Advent knitting, the pattern is divided like into days. And so you can also use it with just like other minis or scrap yarns, and then just change colors when you hit the end of that day. So you can also do that project, but not having to use an Advent calendar specifically. The only downside is that it doesn't need the extra main skein, which means that I can either, if I wanted to use that with either my Hue Loco or the Fiber Fox one, that I could then have, sorry, another text message came through, but that one was saying that everything was okay. So, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, people. This is why I'm all over the place. But I could have that extra skein to use in a different project. But I really like to use them all together because they're a set, right? Right? We'll see. But I do like that one. And there's a lot of other options as well that I think once I see the colors, I'll have a better idea and know what I want to do. Or this could be the year that I design my own pattern. I don't know. Should we get into designing patterns, pattern design? You know what I mean? Maybe. We'll see what happens. But then that leaves me my Magpie Fibers, which is interesting because it only has 12 minis plus the full skein. So this could be a good opportunity to do some smaller projects. For example, I was looking at the mini striped cowl by Angie Kimmel. Again, I can't read my handwriting, so I'll put it up on the screen. But that one takes 200 yards of a main color and then 220 yards of contrasting colors. Their example used 4 20-gram minis with like 80 to 90 yards, which I feel like the minis at the Magpie Fibers don't have nearly 80 to 90 yards in them. I feel like they're a lot lower. So I think you could totally do like the 200 yards of the main color and use like 6 of the minis, and then you'd have 6 minis left over for another project, such as the Scrappy Marl Hat by Beta Jezek. This was actually a free pattern. The link, you can get it through Ravelry. Again, I have it linked in that bundle page, but it's actually free on the Hedgehog Fibers website. And this is fingering weight held double, and you just need about 70 grams total. Again, Hedgehog Fibers has a little bit different yardage than the Magpie Fibers, but I think you can probably figure it out. This one is marled, so you're basically holding 2 strands together and you knit, and then you change out one of the colors at a time so they like fade together. And so you could totally, I think, make the striped cowl and the hat and probably have plenty of yarn to do both, maybe. I'm not sure. I'd have to math that out a little bit more, but it would depend on how many yards are in the main color that come with hedgehog fibers. The speckle work cowl is also on my list. This is by Connie Lee Lynch. This one's a crochet one. I actually have a bunch of crochet patterns. I get a lot of people who come up like during fiber festivals and they look at the really pretty fingering weight yarn and they're like, oh, I'm a crocheter, so I can't use that yarn. Honey pie, yes, you can, first of all. So I would like to test out more like fingering weight crochet patterns so that I can be like, what? Actually, you can. So anyway, I've got a bunch listed on there too. So this particular cowl uses 12 20-gram minis. Boom, just right there. But it says 87 yards each. So for this particular one, I would probably need to use that 13th, the full skein, like the 13th color, as just one more color. Or it could be cool because the Magpie Fibers, this year's Advent, you could choose either dawn or dusk. All the minis are the same, but if you chose dusk, the color, the main skein was like dark and moody. But if you chose dawn, it was like more of a pop of color and contrast, which I know you're saying you definitely got dusk, right? No. I went out of my comfort zone and got dawn. So I'm very excited. So I could even do like one mini and then a couple rows of the contrast color and then another mini, and that should still get it to the right length, even if I can't get quite as many rows as needed with just the main fingering weight. And this one's also pretty cool. I'm pretty sure it's this one. They have like one of those things that like weave through the cowl and then it squinches it up together. So it's got like a little ruffle in it. It's super cute. So anyways, check that one out. That's the speckle work. And then I was also maybe perhaps considering the Adventurous Scarf by Tony Lipsy. There we go, I can pronounce. This one's actually Tunisian crochet. So I've never actually gotten a chance to do Tunisian crochet, and this might be the chance to try it out. This one calls for 13 minis. Again, I have that full contrast skein, and it has like all kinds of instructions for like how to make it wider or longer or things like that. But basically it's just alternating stripes. And so that could be a really cool opportunity, again, to use the contrast skein like between the minis. So I don't know. That's a possibility. And then I actually have already purchased the Juniper Cowl by, again, Tony Lipsy. I love the look of it. I've seen it in person. I actually started crocheting it last year. Actually, it's like January or February when we had a bunch of training at work. And I was using up the scrap yarn left over from the hedgehog fibers. But it's actually, I can see it down in my cubby over there. But something got messed up along the way, and it's just not, again, I think it was because I was trying to crochet while listening in a meeting, and it's just not coming out the way it should. But this could be a chance to try it again. It calls for 10 25-gram minis, but I think having the 12 minis plus the other color, I think I can just change up the color changes, and it would work out fine. So that was another option. I was also looking at the Mini Skein Madness Crochet Ripple Stitch Cowl, which is quite the name. This one basically just called for 240 yards of fingering weight, and you basically worked until the mini ran out. And so like your color changes are just wherever the color change happens to happen, which is kind of interesting. So that way you don't have like a line of color changes, which, you know, if you crochet, like those get kind of funky, but if they're kind of spread all over, it just looks scrappy. They used, I can't remember how many they said they used, but they said it was 540 yards. Let's do that total. So if I use 12 colors, that'd be about 45 yards in each color. And so again, you know, that could be an option for that Magpie Fibers 12 mini skein kit. And then the last one I had on my list, I think it is Hue Loco that came out with a rosé collection, the wine themed mini skeins. I almost got like a set of those too, except that they were so pretty. But Mallory Crawl did I can never pronounce this, the Huga burst scarf, which again, you can buy the pattern on Ravelry or you can get it free off of their website. This one called for 10 of the minis, between 46 and 77 yards each, depending on how many granny squares you had to create, because their pattern called for a total of 48 granny squares. So each mini made between 4 and 5. So obviously 46 yards if you made 4, 77 if you made 5. That's what I'm assuming. Again, I don't know how many yards are in the Magpie Fibers. I just know that it was less than what they usually are. But because there's 12 colors, in order to get 48 squares, you can just do 4 squares in each of the 12 colors. And then you needed, I can't remember, I didn't write it down, but I think it's like 70 grams or 76 grams of yarn to join them together. Again, there's less yardage, but it's not using a full 100-gram skein. So I think it could be done with the Magpie Fibers Advent set. Yeah. So those are kind of my thoughts right now. I'm glad that I don't have to make a decision on it. I'm glad that I have my project for November all picked, or not for, I keep saying November, my project for December all picked out. And then if I open everything along the way, I can enjoy the colors, I can enjoy the surprise, but then there's no pressure to actually create anything until after the fact. And so then I can use the colors to decide on which project that I want to do. Plus, as we get closer, there might be some more Advent patterns that are released or December make-along patterns that would work for minis. So I'm going to keep adding to the list. And like I said, if you guys have any of your favorite Advent or mini skein knitting patterns or crochet patterns, pop them down in the comment. Everybody would love to see that to get some more recommendations as well. So for November, I'm going to be busting a move on that Granny shawl, because it is really, really my goal to get that done before December. So as you can see, I have lost the light outside, so I'm going to go ahead and edit this video, get it posted, and then come up here and work on my special spinning project because I'm so far behind and I really want to get that done tomorrow at the latest. So I will see you guys later. Tell me all about your Advent plans down in the comments. Like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Bye, guys.